guys being here says a lot about who you are as players, but also as people. I started and founded TRU Sports 15 years ago with Kobe Evans. And the reason why we built TRU and the reason why we started SummerSlam is because we wanted to create a platform, one, for the games to be free. We used to do a big clinic for kids too, and so everybody could be involved. And two, we wanted to have an all-star game during the summer. I went to Deering, grew up in Portland, and when I was in you guys' shoes, we didn't have an all-star game like this where the community came out and you guys had the opportunity to play in front of, there'll be some college scouts at the game. Obviously, I'm an NBA scout, work for the Charlotte Hornets, so there's going to be people that are watching you guys play. So it's great to have that platform, and also just a day where you guys can come out and have fun. People are going to come watch you guys play because they're celebrating you guys and what you guys have accomplished. And so the reason why you guys are sitting here today, Matt will introduce himself here in a second. Grew up in Maine, and we've gone on and done a bunch of different things in basketball. Me throughout the world. Matt has done a bunch of stuff here in Maine, but also across the country with Cooper Flag, and he'll tell you a little bit about that. We just wanted to have the opportunity to talk and share some of our experiences with you guys, so you can hear from players and coaches who have sort of been in your shoes before, and kind of what the path looks like, and some of the things that are really important if you guys want to be successful at any level. So I grew up here, not far from here, went to Lincoln Middle School, went to Deering High School, had a good career at Deering, was Mr. Maine basketball, went on to play at University of Maryland, played at Maryland the year after Maryland won a national championship, won an ACC championship at Maryland, had a good career at Maryland, was all ACC a couple times. Got to play in Michael Jordan's summer counselor camp, which is for the top 20 players in the country. Did that 2 years when I was at Maryland. Got a chance to train with Michael Jordan, play with him during the summertime, learn some things from him and have those experiences with him. Played AAU with LeBron. My dad's from California, so got to play in a couple tournaments with him. Got to know him, got to see how he prepared, what he was doing when he was you guys' ages. Got to play against Kobe Bryant at Rucker Park when I was in high school, going into college. Was roommates with Rajon Rondo and did my summer pre-draft workout stuff with Carmelo Anthony and Chris Paul. So these are just players that I've been around and seen the way that they prepare and seeing what their attitude and mindset is, and that's one of the things that we want to share with you guys so you guys understand what the best players in the world are doing. I played professionally for 16 years, all over the world, played in 8 different countries, so I got a chance to meet a lot of different people, played with and against Luka Doncic in Spain, played with Domantas Sabonis, played against Kristaps Porzingis, so competed with, trained with, and been around some of the best players in the world. And one of the things that we're going to talk about, and Matt's going to talk about, is just some basic things for you guys to take away of the amount of discipline and sacrifice that it truly takes to be successful at whatever level that you guys want to be successful at. And if you take away a couple things, I think it's probably going to be around how hard it is, the sacrifices, and Matt will talk a little bit also about Cooper, if you want to just tell you about your background.
Yeah, so for those of you guys that don't know me, I'm Nik Caner-Medley. I run Results Basketball. I know a lot of you guys are coming up to Bangor to my camps later on in the summer, but it's a pleasure to be here. Obviously, I've had a good relationship with Nik over the last several years, and just really happy to kind of give back to Maine basketball. I started Results back in 2011 after my playing career. I grew up in Maine, just like all of you. Went to Medallion Valley High School, played in college at Husson University, had a good career there, and then I got right into coaching. I coached in college for 9 seasons, and really just found my passion in player development. So I opened a gym up in the Bangor area, and then expanded that gym into a bigger facility called Eastern Maine Sports Academy. And like Nik mentioned, Cooper Flag. I've been working with Cooper since he was in the 6th grade. He was just like 5'6" at the time that I started working with him, and obviously he's grown physically, but he's also, you know, really expanded his skill set and his understanding of the game, and I've been along with him the entire time. So obviously through him, I've had the chance to see a lot of basketball all across the country, and I've had some really neat opportunities that I can share with you guys, with other NBA players as well, getting them ready for the draft. I moved out to California for about 2 months this past spring and did the pre-draft process with Cooper, and had a chance to work with a lot of the other guys involved in that agency. And I just recently got back from Las Vegas, spent some time with Nik out there, going through the NBA Summer League. So certainly, I've had an opportunity to gain a lot of experience working with players at the highest level and seeing how they approach their work, and been able to pick up a lot of neat things that hopefully I can bring back to Maine and share with all of you as you guys go through the process and trying to be the best you can possibly be.
And so Cooper was in you guys' seats, and it was in 2021.
Yeah, we just spoke about it last night. He was just coming off of a knee surgery. He had just a minor knee surgery procedure because he was growing so fast. They had to go in and do a little procedure with his knees to make sure that he wasn't going to dislocate his kneecap. So he did this procedure, and then he came in and he said that he did the mentorship panel with you. He wasn't able to play in the game, but he was there supporting and watching. He said it's a great event. Ace played.
And the two things that I would take away from Cooper and Ace's time here when they're sitting, I mean, they were what, incoming freshmen or 8th grade?
Yeah.
So for you guys that are incoming freshmen, like sitting in the exact same shoes, at that point he was known as one of the top eighth graders, but he hadn't like gotten to that point yet where he'd already kind of like exploded onto the scene. Some people knew who he was in the AAU circuit, but he was still, here in Maine and relatively local at that point.
Yeah.
And had already kind of separated himself as an 8th grader. I think it was, one of the better 8th graders in the country. But, his humility and, we talk about that is, the way you carry yourself. And you can be really, really talented. And it's really important to have that confidence of feeling that self-belief that you're talented, but also having that humility as a teammate. And also having that humility with coaches. It's going to take you a really long way. And Cooper and Ace were extremely humble. They asked really, really good questions. And we do this because, again, we were in your shoes. Growing up around here, I always wanted to have the opportunity to come back and share my experiences with young players. That's why we've been doing this for 15 years. So really this is for you guys and whatever you guys want to take from it. So we'll open up the opportunity for you guys to ask questions, any questions, especially when we have Craig on the phone. I'll ask him some questions. But the goal of this is to have it be laid back, and obviously being relaxed and, having fun today. When we play in these games this afternoon, the point of it is to win these games and to compete. It's an all-star game, but, we really are. Everybody who's going to come watch you play wants to see you compete. And, you guys will see when you get down there. For you guys who haven't been to SummerSlam, the energy's high. We do the Elam ending, so there's always going to be a game winner. So it's just an opportunity for you guys to showcase your talent, and to have fun and, take things away from this type of setting because the time goes by so fast. I mean, you guys are 8th, 9th, high school, going into whatever years you guys are going into in high school. And believe me, it goes by very, very quick, and you have to take advantage of this time. You have to take advantage of these opportunities in high school. You have to really prepare and you have to care. I know there's some really talented players here today. And I think what's going to separate you guys is how much you care and the amount of extra work you're going to put in to differentiate yourself from other players because, these days it doesn't matter. I mean, Cooper's a great example. It really, truly doesn't matter if you're from Newport, Maine, South Portland, Maine, South Dakota, Alaska, Slovenia. If you can play, if you put in the time and you work and you have the self-belief and you carry yourself with class and professionalism, it's going to open up a lot of doors. And so that's really, the why around why we do this mentorship program is one, to be resources, myself and Matt, moving forward. I know some of you guys, and you guys can always reach out and, you know, any feedback we can give you guys, any way we can help you guys through your career. You know, I have a lot of really close relationships in college basketball and at the NBA level, also internationally, Matt does as well. And so I think it's really important for you guys to take advantage of opportunities you have to build relationships, because as your career moves on and you go into high school, go into college, I don't know if you guys have ever heard the saying that it's all about relationships. And it truly is, from a personal standpoint, from a business standpoint, from a basketball standpoint. Relationships are extremely important. And you know, really valuing relationships and nurturing relationships is really important too. And it's part of being thorough as an individual. When somebody reaches out to you, making sure that you reach back to them and, you know, respect each other's time and stuff like that. And so one of the guys that we're going to talk to today, his name's Craig Bushnat. He grew up in Boston, but he went to St. Joe's. And he was with the Red Claws for a couple years, and then he took over as the player development coach for the Celtics. And now he's an assistant. He just got promoted to the front of their bench. He's an assistant with them. Like I said, he'll tell you all about kind of his work with Pritchard and with Sam Hauser and some of the other guys in the Celtics. And I think the important thing, and one of the things I'm going to be asking him, is understanding. I think it doesn't matter if you're in high school, boy or girl, 8th grade, 9th grade, if you have an opportunity to understand how the best players in the world are preparing, there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't prepare yourself the exact same way. And if you put yourself in that mental space where I'm going to be a professional basketball player, then you have an opportunity. Because if you start to prepare now, and Matt will talk about this with Cooper, if you start now preparing like a pro, then you're just the fluidity of how you transition into college and then as a pro is going to be so much smoother for you, and it's all just going to seem natural because it's all you know as a player, because you started to prepare that way, you started to have that mental approach. And you have to believe there's no reason why everybody in here shouldn't have an opportunity to play in the NBA or the WNBA, or get to play professionally at whatever level, or have a scholarship to play college. It's genuinely in your hands how hard you want to work, the sacrifices you want to make, how disciplined you want to be, and ultimately, you know, the decisions that you make. The decisions you make with your time. You know, do I want to spend time in the gym with my diet, extra work, or do I want to go to the beach, and do I want to go out, and do I want to have fun? There's a balance, but I can guarantee you without a shadow of a doubt, and one of the reasons I told you about some of the players that I've trained with and been around, is so you guys understand when I tell you what these players are doing and what you need to do to be successful, it's because I've seen it up close and personal. I've lived it. And what you really have to do is you have to make decisions between, do I want to be a regular kid, or do I want to be great at what I do? And to separate being great from being good, or average from being excellent, it's all in the details of the way that you prepare, the way that you carry yourself, and how seriously not only do you take your opportunities, but it's ultimately how serious you take yourself. Because, you know, the more serious that you take your craft and the more serious you take your preparation, there's also a self-respect level to that, where it's how serious you're taking yourself and how serious you want to be great. So before we get on with Craig here in like 10 minutes, I just wanted Matt to have the opportunity to talk a little bit, before we go into the pro side of things, talk a little bit about what Cooper's routine was like in middle school, because I know we have some players here in the Rising Star game, some players that are coming in as freshmen, some a little further along in high school. But just talk a little bit about how detail-oriented Cooper was and how detail-oriented you've been with him with the process, just so everybody in here understands the level of obsession and the attention to detail that it takes to be really good.
Sure. Yeah. So, like Nick said earlier, you know, Cooper was back in middle school, 7th and 8th grade. He was just starting to kind of get on the map nationally, and he played in a lot of the same events that you guys go off and play in now, like Maine hoops. I know some of you guys have the logo on. He played in the Maine hoop circuit. He was traveling mainly in the Northeast, and again, he was just starting to get recognized. But the one thing that really separated him from his peers at that time was how he valued playing the right way, and he played on both sides of the ball, and he studied the game more than pretty much any high school player or middle school player around him. I tell people he watched basketball in its purest form. So his parents and myself and Andy Bedard, if you guys have heard that name, that was our coach with Maine United. We would put film in front of Cooper when he was back in the 7th and 8th grade of like the '86 Celtics, the 2008 Celtics, and we had him really watch like how well they moved the ball and how selfless they were. We wanted him to understand spacing and decision making. And it wasn't just about the one-on-one skills. It was all about basketball as a whole and understanding the intensity that you need to bring on the defensive end. So he would watch film, he would watch old highlights of different players that we wanted him to model his game after. And I think that taking that approach was really helpful for him. And then from a training standpoint, he was very intentional about his work starting in about the 8th grade. When he was younger than that, I think a lot of it came from the fact that he just loved basketball. He loved being in the gym, and his parents would give him every single resource that they could to make sure that he was surrounded by the right people to be as great as he possibly could be. But once he got into the 8th grade, I think he started to realize that he was different and he had a chance. He started to really kind of dive into how much do I have to be in the gym with you, Matt? The minor little details and nuances of what were some of his weaknesses and how he can really kind of continue to improve those weaknesses. And then it was all about, okay, now that we have a good understanding of what we need to do in terms of skill development, what else can I be doing with my approach off the court to make sure that I'm the best athlete I can possibly be? So we started to dive into what does nutrition look like. We started to dive into what his sleep habits were looking like. We talked about building a foundation for sports performance training, so weight training, and he started to get into that. And that's what it takes. It's a holistic approach, I call it, and understanding that the sooner that you can start treating your body and your mind like a pro, the better chance you have. If you're just starting to try to figure it out after you've already got to your senior year in high school, it's probably too late. So you want to try to dive into that as quickly as you possibly can and really have a good understanding, like, all of this stuff matters. It's not just how well you can go hoop on an AAU tournament on the weekend. You've got to make sure that you are treating your body like a professional day in and day out, and that doesn't just end on the basketball court. So again, going back to Cooper in middle school, we started to kind of work on those things back when he was in the 8th grade, and that intensified as he went through high school. When he moved to Florida at Montverde, I would travel down and work with him for about a week every month, and we had little touch points, and like I said before, we were very intentional about what those touch points were. And sometimes it was just something as simple as, Cooper, how much sleep are you getting night after night? And a lot of times it was like, okay, we have to adjust this because you're staying up too late playing video games, or your diet wasn't so good last week, and maybe that's impacting your performance. So just kind of taking a look in the mirror and seeing where you're at now, what are some of your habits, and seeing if you can kind of pinpoint little areas that you can improve on. I think that's going to help you guys a lot. We can talk more about that in a little bit, but Cooper was a normal kid. He was a normal kid, and once we realized that he was going to be special, we really had to kind of dive in and look at different areas of improvement. He's in a really good space right now, but he still has areas that he can improve on, and he always will throughout his career.
So we're gonna jump on with Coach Lucianet, like I told you. He'll tell you a little bit about his background and some of the things that are really important to the success of players at the NBA level. Again, like we talked about, albeit you're in high school, but preparing right now and understanding the things that some of the best players in the world do to prepare, it just gives you more tools in your toolbox to prepare, and it gives you a better understanding of some of the things you need to do to prepare as time goes on, and how seriously the players that you guys watch and how successful they are. When you hear a little bit about the things they're doing under the hood to prepare, it just helps give you a little bit better understanding of like the why behind some of your preparation and some of the things your coaches ask you to do and some of the things that we talk about. Coach, how you doing?
Good, how you guys doing?
All right, doing great, doing great. So we got a group here of boys and girls, high school, a couple middle school, right? 8th grader, mostly incoming 9th, all the way up through incoming seniors. And one of the things that we're talking about is the preparation, the discipline, the type of sacrifices to give these kids an understanding of what it takes to look forward and potentially be an NBA player one day, or get a chance to play at a high level in college basketball. And so we're just sort of talking through some of the process, the attention to detail, and I mentioned to them, the work that you've done with the Celtics, but also wanted you to have the opportunity to tell them a little bit about your time. I told them you went to school at St. Joe's in Maine, so you're familiar with the area. So if you want to just kind of intro and let everybody know a little bit about your background.
Yeah, no, first of all, I appreciate you guys having me here. It's an unbelievable opportunity for you guys to kind of all to learn and, pick each other's brains and hear some great, conversations and stories and, ultimately just, help you better yourself. But, for me, played at St. Joe's, like Nick said, played there for 4 years. Was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to intern for Noah LaRoche, who's one of the best player development guys in the world, and fortunate just to be able to learn from him. Was able to parlay that into an opportunity with the Celtics early on, where I started in Maine with the Maine G League team, and then kind of was able to work my way up. Spent 3 years in Maine, and then this will now be my 3rd year in Boston, or 4th year in Boston. And so, obviously learned a lot over that time, but, we can definitely dive into kind of specifics of what you're looking for in terms of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked a little bit about preparation, right? And on the preparation side for players, some of the players that you work with really hands-on with the Celtics. Let's talk a little bit about, for example, Peyton Pritchard. I know you spent a lot of time with Peyton, Sam Hauser, some of these guys. Let's talk a little bit about the attention to detail and just the level of obsession that these guys have with the game of basketball and all the different details. Matt was talking a little bit about Cooper and his preparation when he was young. But just to fast forward to what it looks like as a high-level NBA player and some of the things you do from a player development side to prepare these guys to play and sort of what their habits look like, and specifically with a guy like Peyton.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, there's a lot of different things we can touch on with that. I'll say, Sam and Peyton are definitely, 2 of the hardest workers I've seen in my time in professional basketball. Both kind of for different reasons, right? I think for Sam, he's the best I've ever been around in terms of taking care of his body, preparing his body. I think he understands that his biggest weakness is his athleticism at times, and so, his ability just to prepare his body, whether it be pre-court or post-court, with the activation he's doing, the stretching he's doing, the cold tubs he's taking, just making sure that he's, preparing his body, in every way possible, is really the best I've seen. And I think it's the biggest reason why, he's had the ability to turn himself from an undrafted player into really our 6th man on the team that won the championship. And then for Peyton, he's definitely one of one just with his mentality, right? I think his overall competitive spirit is unmatched. I think he is somebody that always wants to compete, whether that be against a coach in a drill or against a player in a drill. One of the things I learned early on working him out was everything needs to be competitive, right? Everything needs to be him competing against either a player or coach, because that's ultimately what brings the most out of him. And, he just does a phenomenal job every day with, his mentality and his engagement, right? Every rep that he has is fully engaged. He's fully understanding why we're working on something, how it applies in the game, and how he can better himself for that. But his ability just to, show up every day, even like when days are hard and we're getting off a long road trip, or he's played heavy minutes, or whatever the case may be, he still brings it every day to go on the floor. It's something like I say all the time is, basically every guy on our team gets roughly the same amount of working per year, right? We're very scheduled and try to be organized with how much time each guy's working on the floor, just so we can make sure we're taking care of their bodies. But in terms of minutes spent on the floor, there's nobody that maximizes those minutes more than me. Every minute he's on the floor, he is getting real reps in and working at game speed. And just a final story I'll tell, for Peyton, but obviously we won the championship 2 years ago, and we tell all our guys, after the season to take a month off. It's a long season, 9-month season, especially when you're playing into June, and our guys need to be able to recover and have that recovery process time. But I'll never forget, we won on a Monday, and he called me that Sunday and said, I need you to come down with Kate. We need to get back in the gym. And I told him, I said, look, it's not best for you. Like, you need to take time off. You need to allow your body to recover. And he basically told me, like, I'm getting in the gym with or without you. So, like, if you want to be here, help me. Like, you got to come down. I'm getting in with or without you. So that next week from after we won the championship, he was back in the gym working out. Just kind of speaks to his mentality.
Yeah, I mean, that to piggyback that, Coach, one of the things that I oftentimes reflect on from my career and some of the players I've had the opportunity to work out with, be around, players that have had great careers in the NBA or players that have gone on and been high-level coaches in the NBA, is talking about how there's no coincidence between the best players in the world and then, to your point with Peyton and Sam, being the hardest workers. And I think a lot of times young players hear you have to work hard, you have to put in the work, right? And how important that is. But from your experience, can you speak a little bit on how oftentimes the, in air quotes, most talented players and the most successful players at the highest level are not coincidentally also the hardest workers, that have the most attention to detail and have all the way around the clock, body maintenance, taking care of your body, the way you eat, all of these different things that you need to do to be successful. From your time at the highest level, obviously, how much have you seen that where the most talented and the most successful players, the Tatums, the Jaylen Browns, the Peyton Pritchards, are also the most obsessed, the hardest workers, and the most dialed in as pros?
Yeah, there's no question about it. I think, speaking to JT, he's definitely the biggest student of the game I've ever seen. He's watching games every night, and he knows exactly what's going on around the league and wants to talk about what's happening around the league. He's watching other players that he can learn from, and also just wanting to understand what teams are doing, around the league. And so, super impressed with his ability just to, again, not only work as hard as he does on the floor and with his body, but also just his ability to know what's happening with his peers and what's happening around the league. So that when he play guys, he knows their tendencies. He knows, what they like to do defensively, what they like to do offensively, how he can best attack and what areas, on that given night will be best for him. JT is an elite student of the game, and it really helps him from, between the years, that when he steps on the floor, that he kind of knows what to expect. But yeah, I mean, there's no question that what ultimately separates the guys that improve the most and get the most out of their talent are the ones that are fully invested, not only on the floor, that's your entry ticket, is being invested on the floor, but it's what are you doing outside of the floor, right? How are you lifting? How are you stretching? How are you taking care of your body in terms of, ice baths, recovery, things of this nature? That is Ron is obviously well documented, like the things that he does in terms of taking care of his body and how he's been able to play for all these years. And so, I think it's a holistic approach for these guys. And to your point, I think the guys that, ultimately play the longest and play at the highest levels are the ones that, take that holistic approach.
For these young players here, from a coach's perspective, and they're coming in their high school team, middle school team, I think a lot of these players have an opportunity to play at the college level and hopefully someday play professionally. As a coach at the highest level, what are some of the things that you look for in terms of your coaching philosophy and the way you build a relationship with players? What are some of the things that you would kind of recommend and give advice for players of how they can build those relationships and be received as coachable? Like, to you, what is being coachable and being the type of player, obviously that gives themselves the opportunity to be great by building those type of relationships with their coaching staffs, their teammates? Like, what are some of these things that you see in successful players and the players that you work with, not only with the Celtics, but in general throughout your career as you work with high-level players? What are you seeing in terms of just personality, demeanor, character, the way that these players are carrying themselves and their professionalism in ways that these young players can kind of interact and engage?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. So I think kind of two pieces there, right? I think first and foremost, one of the biggest things that I emphasize with our guys, and anyone new that we bring in, the first thing I do when I sit down with them is talking about, we really emphasize to our guys that we're going to put them in a position where they're going to fail a lot. And them being comfortable and understanding why we're putting them in positions to fail, right? I think ultimately, if you're staying within your comfort zone in your workouts, right, and you're, not trying to make mistakes, trying to make every shot, again, just staying within your comfort zone, you'll never improve as much as you would if you were really trying to stretch yourself. And so we build environments with our guys on the floor that really stretch and make them try and fail as much as they're comfortable. Guys are ultimately the decision makers, the one that determine if they're with us or how much they're playing. One of the things I always talk about is nobody cares how you play except for the 82-game regular season and the 28-game postseason. That's the only time anyone cares how you play. So summer league, preseason, all of our practices in our gym, it's all opportunities for you to just get better as a basketball player, right? And if you're not taking those opportunities to work on your game, then again, you will never improve as much as you should. And so, one of the things I always say to our new guys is, if I can make a deal with you that for the rest of your career, you're going to miss every single shot you take outside of the game. But once you get into the game, you're going to shoot 55%. Like, would you sign up for that deal? Of course, they all say yes. They all say absolutely. And so my point in that is, again, nobody cares if you look good in practice. Nobody cares, if you drop 40 in the preseason game, right? Ultimately, the only thing anyone cares about is how well you play in the regular season, the postseason for us, right? When Brad negotiates deals with our guys, he's never going to reference a summer league game or a preseason game, right? It's what they do when the lights are really on. And so I think building that perspective and that mentality for you guys, when you guys are in practice, right, you should be constantly just trying to improve so that when you step onto the floor in a game setting, that you're your best version of yourself. And trying to really stretch and fail in practice and make mistakes and then self-organize from those mistakes that you're making is the name of the game. And then in terms of the coachability piece, everybody's role is different on a team, right? Everybody plays a part in winning, and ultimately, if you can understand where you fall within the team, right? How you can best impact winning, the more opportunities you'll get at higher levels to win and to play, right? Sam, Peyton, and Luke are all great examples of that, right? Sam and Luke were both undrafted. Peyton was a late first-round pick. right? But they all knew the only way that they're going to play and be an impactful player for the Boston Celtics is if they made JD's life easier and just pick up for all the things that they can do to make their lives easier, right? And so there's a lot of guys we get in that are first round picks, middle of the lottery. You see around the league all the time, all examples of all these guys that don't make it. It's because they don't understand what their role needs to be to impact to win. And Luke just signed for $40 million. Sam signed for $45 million last year. Like these guys they understand who they need to be, and that goes off the floor as well, right? They're trying to be the best teammates they can be, the best locker room guys they can be, right? The best people in the community they can be, whether it's again engaging with fans or helping at different events, but just trying to be the best person they can be, and ultimately the best teammate they can be, and that makes coaching them extremely easy because they know who they are, they know who they need to be, they know their strengths, their weaknesses, and they're not trying to be someone they're not.
Yep. I hope everybody heard exactly what Coach just said, because that's one of the reasons why we're here. And if there's one thing that you can take away outside of the on-court stuff, it's what Coach just outlined in terms of the way you carry yourself and the understanding of your role and being willing to star in your role and having the humility to understand that not everybody is going to be the superstar on the team. Not everybody's Jason Tatum, right? But like Coach just said, if you guys obviously know Luke Cornett, just signed a $40 million contract with the San Antonio Spurs. In Charlotte, to be honest, Coach, I was super high on Luke, and I was hoping we had an opportunity to bring Luke in. And one of the reasons why is because when you watch the way he engages with his teammates, when you watch how enthusiastic he is with his teammates, even when he's on the bench, not only when he's in the game and gets an and one, but how enthusiastic he is for his teammates when he's on the bench and for their success. In winning environments, like one of the many reasons why the Celtics have had the success they've had is guys like Luke, who understand how important it is to be that type of teammate and bring that type of enthusiasm, and pay attention to those details, and be willing to star in their role, and be willing to not be the guy all the time, And there's a path to success for every single role on the bench, and that's extremely important to understand. With two ways now, there's 18 available contracts on every NBA roster, right? And then there's hundreds of opportunities to play internationally, and for every single seat on that bench, there's a role to be played. And so that feedback and understanding how important that part is huge. If you guys have one main takeaway from that piece and the way that you can carry yourself as a teammate and, obviously in the locker room and with your coaching staff, I think that's huge. Coach, I want to give the players here an opportunity, because I know you've got to run in a minute, just to ask a couple of quick questions. Any questions you guys want to ask about anybody on the team, any of the stuff from a player development standpoint? We got another 5 minutes, so I want to use this last couple of minutes to ask any questions, and somebody's going to have to step up and ask a question. So hopefully somebody's going to step up and ask something. I don't know if it's going to be about anybody on the team particularly, if it's about working with Coach Mazzulla, if it's about anything from a player development standpoint to work on. But let's come up with a couple of questions.
Mentally, it's hard, also being able to play a role all the time. Does it ever affect players mentally? I have to play this role no matter what.
Yeah.
Can't really
Yeah, so he said, sometimes playing a role, especially if maybe you're a guy mid-bench, right? And playing a role can be frustrating sometimes, and mentally, how challenging and how do guys at the highest level manage sometimes where you don't get the opportunity to play, but obviously you still have a really important role in winning, and how do you see guys managing the mental side of being able to star in your role? And you want to be successful, right? Everybody wants to get a bigger contract and everybody wants to play at the next level. How do you see guys managing that in between the lines with just the mental side?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So there's kind of two parts to that, right? There are guys that, it's funny, there's guys that play, 10 to 15 minutes a night that wish they were playing 20 to 35, right? And then there's guys that aren't playing at all. For the guys that aren't playing at all, you can really in every situation you can only control or you struggle, but those guys are example of this. So 3 years ago, Hayden didn't play at all for us, right? The year we had Malcolm Brogdon, Hayden literally played in probably half of our games, and he was playing mostly in garbage time. That entire year, again, nobody outworked him. Every day in practice, he was finding time to get better, working on his game, and then when his opportunity came, he was ready. The thing that we always emphasize, is everybody's going to get an opportunity. It's just when you get your opportunity, are you ready to maximize it? Because you may only get one. Certain guys get, multiple, but, certain guys may only get one. And when you get that one, can you take advantage of it? And then for the guys that are, still playing but not playing as much as they want, again, it's about ultimately how can you make the team better. So for us, we have a lot of analytics that show that, right? How much you're impacting, the scoreboard. But if you can just continually, prove that when you're in the game, you guys are winning the minutes you're in, the coach is going to have no choice but to play you. And so if you can just find ways to move the scoreboard, right, in a positive direction, ultimately you're going to play more. And if you focus less on your stats, your shooting, your percentages, your assists, your rebounds, more so about, can I set a screen for somebody that's going to create an advantage? Can I have a cut for somebody that's going to create an advantage? Can I sprint transition that's going to open up someone behind me to come, make a play in transition? So all the little things, right? How can you control that? And if you can continually prove that you're making good decisions in those spots, you're going to ultimately give, coach no choice but to play on.
Yeah, that's a great question. Coach, I know you got to run. Thank you so much for your time, for your feedback. I appreciate it very much. I can tell everybody in the room has been super attentive and appreciates it as well. Wish you all the best this season, and hopefully we'll have a chance to chat with you again.
Awesome. Good luck, guys.
Take care.
All right, see you.
So we're going to eat lunch here in a second, but I just wanted to recap a couple of the things that he said. It's interesting because, I'm sure it's similar for you, hearing some of his feedback. You're never, whether you're around Cooper or you're around other professional players, or whether you've been in locker rooms or you've been around other NBA players, it's always really interesting and inspiring to hear about successful players and successful people and the things that they do to be successful. And the thing that I find every time I get an opportunity to hear feedback like this from kind of behind the scenes of how guys are working and how they're preparing. I mean, this is a guy who's under the hood with, arguably in the last 3 or 4 years, one of the best teams in the world. Won a championship, which, obviously speaks for itself. So his feedback has to resonate, and hopefully all of you hear what he's saying and taking it to heart, because his feedback about Peyton, his feedback about Sam and Luke, and the way that they have starred in their roles, and one of the things that I would take away from this and myself as a player is what he said about that one opportunity. You don't know if you're going to get 100 opportunities. You don't know if you're going to get one, because there's a lot of stuff that's not going to be in your control. You can't make a coach play you. You can't make a college scout come to the gym and say, I want that guy, or I want that girl. You can't control that, right? But what you can control is how you prepare. And what you can control is your attitude and your enthusiasm when you're on the bench. And you may have heard it before, somebody is always watching you, especially if you're a talented player, especially if you're on a winning team, especially if you've had success. In 2025, as you guys all know better than me, with social media and phones and accessibility, everybody is always watching. Somebody's always watching what you guys are doing, the way that you're carrying yourself. And they're making mental notes, And so one of the biggest things I took away, and then Matt will give you a couple of things he took away, is just how important it is to control what you can control in your preparation. Because you never know who's watching. You never know when you're going to get your opportunity, right? And just that preparation and knowing that you've done everything to prepare. Like if I was in your shoes, and when I was in your shoes, at the end of every day, I wanted to feel like I did everything I possibly could to get the most out of that day. And if you get the most out of one day, you can wake up the next day and you can challenge yourself to get the most out of that day. And that's that sort of one-on-one competitiveness that you need to have with yourself to be successful, where you're always constantly driving yourself and having that self-motivation to get the most that you can, so you know when that opportunity comes that you're prepared for it.
So I want to tell a quick story just because hearing Coach talk kind of brought me back to a couple years ago. Actually, I think it was about a year ago. Just after the Celtics had won the NBA Finals, I was out in Las Vegas with Cooper for the USA Select camp, and then had an opportunity to play against our Olympic team. So the first night that we got out to Las Vegas, we actually went to dinner with Peyton Pritchard, and he was just coming off the NBA Finals. And it was funny hearing Coach talk because Peyton Pritchard was talking about how, obviously he was thrilled to be an NBA champion, and he was so excited that he could impact winning in his role, but he wasn't satisfied. And he'd only played 1 minute in the final game of the NBA Finals that year. He said that was going to drive the entire offseason. Like, it's one thing to, obviously be a star in your role, and you want to make sure that you are impacting winning in every way you can, but you don't have to be satisfied with it, right? In the offseason, attack your weaknesses. Continue to go back to the drawing board, look at what you can do to continue to improve. And that was something that Peyton was talking about, how he wanted to make sure that the next year he was coming back and able to add even more to what he could bring to the Boston Celtics team. And sure enough, he did it. And Malcolm Brogdon, I think, got moved maybe that summer, and he came back and Peyton was ready. And listening to Coach talk about how he was calling him, telling him to come to the Cape, because whether he was going to be with them or not, he was going to be putting in the work. He wasn't going to take that month off. That was a very true story because he was talking all about that at dinner that night and just how hungry he was, and having won a championship, he wanted to make sure that he came back next year and put himself in a position to even have a greater impact. And sure enough, he came back sixth man of the year.
I was going to say.
Sixth man of the year, right? And that doesn't happen by accident. And so, like, you had a good question about the mental approach. I think that you don't have to be satisfied, but you have to be able to accept what your role may be, but with that, continue to improve and be able to figure out a way that you can maybe maximize your role in the time being, in the present, but also maybe be able to come back the following season, the following year, even better, be able to offer more.